Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Today I'd like to welcome my guest, Adam Garner.
Good morning. Shows you how busy I am. I can't even remember. What time is it right now?
Morning.
Good evening. It's morning somewhere.
It's morning somewhere in the globe. That if you believe that the globe is round. If you don't, well.
You know why I know the Earth is flat?
How?
Because the oceans aren't carbonated.
Oh, shit. That's a good joke. I like that. Adam works for ADT, and he's a sort of a jack of all trades, right? You do security, fire.
Yeah, I primarily deal with fire most of the times, but
big timer.
Yeah, but security, access, video, I've done it all, and I continue to do it all, mostly on the on-call side, because that's just what we have to do.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So you do so you basically stay on call. I mean, you work all day and do on call at night, or are you like the main on-call tech? Or
gosh, some people would like to pay me to be if they could. It's like, hey, you want to take my on-call? Take a couple extra bucks.
We had a tech that did that at Western States. He just took all the on-calls, all of them.
You know, if you're looking for the money, it's not a bad decision to make. If you have a good work-life balance, you can make a lot of extra money doing on-call stuff. But after a while, some of it just gets
it burns you out.
Yeah. So I'm trying to work on that work-life balance a little bit better. It's like I'm not going to go on call when I can avoid it. So we do a rotation, but when I'm on call, I'm expected. You know everything. You're going to service everything.
Yeah.
So
that's heavy when you have to be that. Because if I got called out to a camera job, I'm like, you should probably call a camera person, is what I'd say.
Yeah, and a lot of them are like that, right? I actually had to do training with a bunch of other techs at our office because they had zero experience with fire. So I kind of got them up to snuff on, okay, here's some tips and tricks and things you can do. And they're like, oh, this is so great. We have to start doing this for security and for access. I'm like, awesome. Or you could just completely change your on-call so the people who know the systems are ones get the call.
Yeah, that might work.
That might be the thing to do. But
so how did you get in the trade? I mean, and let's talk about where you worked before here.
So I had attempted to do a completely different career.
Okay.
I had gone and gotten a degree in game art and animation, so 3D stuff.
Wow.
It is a absolutely cutthroat industry. And there are articles still coming out how poorly people who work in it are treated, especially like the Marvel movies. Perfect example. Okay. Everybody who is required to do like FX and 3D work for them are just ridden into the dirt. They're not paid very well. They're overworked. They're undervalued.
No kidding.
And they just get strong-armed because it's like, hey, if you don't go do it, we're going to hire somebody over in Russia that can do it for half the cost and half the time. So, do it or, we'll blacklist you. And we're the biggest company out there making movies. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't really get an opportunity because, you graduate, you farm your resume out to as many places as you can and you never get a phone call back. So.
And you went to school here?
Yeah. Nice. Over at the Art Institute, Portland.
Okay. Wow.
So, and then
that's a pretty well-known place, by the way.
Yeah, I met some pretty interesting people.
Their sprinkler system.
Yeah,
all they know.
It's an interesting place. So when I didn't get any of my opportunities myself, I tried to make one, and I went and attempted to start a company with a couple other guys, and it was an interesting experience. But I would say, like a group project, you go in and you get together with a bunch of people, and then you find out you're the only one actually doing any work.
Yeah, and
it's like, well, that didn't really work out that well.
You can feel it like when you about the time you realize that it's like wah wah wah. You're like oh.
But I can say I at least tried. I spent a year of my life. I did a lot of work, and everybody that saw it said it was great. But again, never really went anywhere with it. Did a lot of freelance stuff. One of the guys that I had tried to go into business with, he actually was in this industry, and he's the one that introduced it to me. He's like,
okay.
hey, it's not quite working. How about we try something else? I was like, well, what do you got? I'm open, because I just left a different career to try to start that. I used to be a laser coder tech. So
For cutting metals or for plastics or?
Mostly for like, the water bottles we see here, the date codes on that, milk jugs, that kind of stuff.
Oh, so they would just lightly etch it in.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was kind
That
of
is an interesting gig. I never thought about that.
It was a fun place to work. A lot of interesting stories there. But I hated the travel.
So it was here locally or?
I would service as far out as Montana, down to Vegas.
Okay.
Working in the summertime in a sheetrock plant in Vegas was awful.
Oh, so the equipment was installed and you were the technician going out and servicing it and updating the software and.
Yeah, I would take care of all that stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep.
So the travel was brutal and the work type.
Yeah, I mean the
locations
the locations are actually kind of fun. A lot of breweries, a lot of interesting warehouses. At one point, I went to Alaska for a week, and I probably hit just about every single island with a fishing plant on it.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, so because they put it on the cans?
Yeah, when fish come through, they got to wrap them up, and they have to date them and put a bunch of information on them, like and what kind of fish they are.
And this machine does that?
Yep.
No kidding. Huh. Yep. I did not know that.
Yeah, they were pretty cool machines, but I hated going to Seattle every week. Just the drive is awful. So I wanted to try something new. And then he got me into this, and here we are, years and years later.
And how long have you been in the industry now?
I'm coming up on about 10 years because I'm keeping the time and date really keeping my eye on that, because next year I'm going to get my NICET 4 and fire alarm systems.
So you're a 3 now?
Yep.
Excellent. Kids, get your NICETs.
Yep, I'm NICET 3 fire alarm systems. I got my LEA, my 06. Yep. Pretty much any certification that's offered to me, I'll take it.
Good.
Because I just like to learn. I have my old boss even tried to get me my high voltage license. I was like, sure, let's do it. Yeah. But the company was like, no, we don't do that.
Is this when you work for ProTech or?
Actually, ADT. I started the industry with Allied.
Yeah.
And then
I liked that company when it was around. By the way, I thought it was a hell of a lot of fun to work with.
But you're the first person to say that.
I used them for besides for keys, but I knew the guy who handled the some of the safes. Tom, a guy named Tom Price. You probably know
I worked with them. Yeah, it was kind of fun because the first job I ever did with them, I was like, hey, what are we going to do? He's like, oh, we're going to go do a bank job. I'm like, whoa,
nice.
What are we getting into?
Nice. Let me go get my handkerchief. Come on.
Yeah. So I worked for them for about 100 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then they cut me loose. And conveniently, the guy that, great name, John, super great guy, he interviewed me at Allied, got me the job there. He left the company before I started. And then when I left, they put in a call to him, and he told me to come interview with him over at ProTech. Yeah. And then I've been working at ProTech. I was the last apprentice for ProTech before they got bought by ADT.
Got it.
And then ADT just kind of acquired all of us. And we're like, well, let's just see how ADT... Actually, they bought Aronson, ASG first, and then they merged ProTech and ASG together. It was like, you guys start playing together. I was like, okay.
Is this when they put you guys in a jar with holes and then they shake it up real violently?
Well, to their credit, they were very hands-off from the service and install side. They were like, we don't want to ruffle any feathers because you guys are doing a good job. That's, why we're buying the company.
Sure.
And we want you to sort of help us see what we can do to make our side better.
Okay.
That's
nice.
Yeah, when they purchased ProTech, ASG was not a fire location, right? And then when ADT merged us, they, again, had no idea what to do about fire. And then after a couple of years working with us, they went and bought Red Hawk, who is almost exclusively fire.
Yeah, and that's for those who don't know, Red Hawk's a pretty big entity up in the Sound area, right? Aren't they from?
They're kind of all over the West Coast.
They're all over the West Coast?
And don't quote me on this, but I think it's one of those weird things where there are 2 separate Red Hawks, and they acquired one of them. So when you start getting into the nitty gritty of the names, it's like, all right, which one is this? Because like
one spelled with 2 D's for my double dose of pimping. No, that's interesting.
Well, it's like with ProTech when I worked there, there are at least 3 other companies named ProTech. Anytime I go to like Platt to get something, like, which one are you?
I did not know that. I thought there was just one.
No, there was another actual electrical outfit named ProTech.
Okay.
And I think there's one with a K. I'm not even sure what they do.
Okay, I get it.
So a lot of that.
Yeah. And then the ProTech that we all know.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I was working another job, and they said I did some stuff on the job already. I'm like, no, this is my first day here. They're like, no, you're the low voltage fire guy named Adam. I'm like, yeah. It's like, yeah, you were here yesterday. I'm like, what are you talking about?
You're like,
and then I find out there's another Adam Garner who's another low
oh,
voltage.
no kidding?
Yeah, and I go and introduce myself. I'm like, hey, brother.
Dang. And you guys know...
No relation, no nothing.
I ran into a Michael Brooks who worked for Harvey and Price, which is a sprinkler company down south. And we were on the same job together. And his assistant said, this is Michael Brooks. And I said, yeah. And he goes, no, this is Michael Brooks. I said, you? And he goes, yeah. I said, what? And we both looked at each other. We have no relation at all. Just happened to both fall in the same industry. Well, kind of. And I was doing alarms while they were doing sprinklers at the same place. That's how we crossed in Salem, of all places, in between the two.
Yeah, when they say it's a small world, you get it, and then you have an experience like that, and you're like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Is someone playing a prank on me?
Yeah. He is handsome, though. So.
Yeah. But I'm surprised, because as you probably barely remember, I just started with the apprenticeship program. So I'm doing a little bit of substituting there, a couple of classes
Right,
so far.
I've seen you bouncing around there.
Yep. But I still remember you from when I went through the apprenticeship program.
I was going to say, the hard part is that at this point now, it's like me and Dave and Grant. We know, like, everybody knows us, and we're like, oh shit. I don't remember exactly where I know you from. It could be America's Most Wanted. I don't know. So you went through my class.
Yeah,
and survived.
You were teaching fire.
Yeah,
and
that was a zoo.
Yeah, but at the time, and I don't know if this has changed. I actually had my NISET in fire before I even took your class.
Before you took the class, I do remember that.
Yep. So has that changed since I've been through it? Somebody else has done that?
I don't know. I'm not teaching it right now. I haven't taught it in a couple of years. Mike Baker's at NISET 4, and Gary Youngberg started teaching it, and I backed out because there's no reason for me to, I'm only going to
step on their toes.
I'm only 2. I'm on the side. Yeah, and I don't need to teach. I needed new blood in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know too many other folks who have it. You know what I'm saying? And who have got before they ever went through the class. I think maybe one more. I do remember there was at least one more I remember. And no, I think there was one more, but I couldn't tell you what class it was. Anyway, it's
I probably passed with a C.
Well, that class, that particular book and that courseware, we reworked, and it's still being reworked so that it's kind of trimmed down correctly. And I mean, it's always a work in progress. It really, really is.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So what are you teaching for us now?
I've just done a couple of classes for Dave, helped him with his code class, which ironically, I really enjoyed teaching.
Really?
Did not enjoy going through it the first time.
But you love it. You love the teaching.
Yeah. That I was really surprised because I was thinking, oh, it's going to be so dry and boring. But I get up there and it's actually a lot more fun than I thought.
Yeah.
So
I enjoy teaching, and every once in a while I'll have one of these moments where I kind of sit back and go, what the hell am I doing? But for the most part, I enjoy the hell out of it, and it's a lot of fun. But this term, I partnered up with Baker so that he could learn specialized controls, how to teach it. And I realized that I ad-lib ad nauseum about different things to try to pique the interest of the student, to try to keep the student's interest. Because if you just stuck with the textbook and my voice, I I can drone people to sleep. I mean, in nothing flat.
Getting a little sleepy over here.
What did you say? But so that's where I go into the history and, like my other specialty with kind of studies, kind of go, hey, this is how this all came about.
No, but from when you guys first moved to the campus, I remember helping set up a little bit of the lab, and going back there now, it's like it's come a long way.
Yeah,
and I hope they get a lot more lab time because that's what I missed the most.
I would like to see that as well, and I'd like to see the fire lab be dialed in, like where it's better than it is, because it's really kind of pieced together, but it's not the way I would like it to be, and that takes time and energy and effort, and I don't know that a new instructor coming on like Gary and Mike have the time to really go out there and make it happen. And so that's going to wind up, it could be something you could jump into if you wanted to. I mean, we got an EST3 sitting there that Colton gave us from a couple of years ago. I don't have the program. I don't have the knowledge.
Not many people do have the program.
No, but if we could just get it up and running that people could see it self-map and, do some of its functionality, I think that would be great. But at the same point in time, the only people going to work on a 3 is a 3 tech.
True.
And 3's now discontinued, so is it now obsolete like all the 5000 series crap that's hanging on the wall?
Well, the EST will still service 3s for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's true.
But 2 or less, it's like even call tech support, they're like, go buy something else, click.
Get off. So how did you get into the security side of the house? Was it through ProTech?
Yeah, so the nice thing about ProTech was they were all service. So I got to learn access control, security, cameras, fire, everything. So I worked on DMP, Bosch, Radionics, DSX. There's so many that I can forget all the acronyms after a certain period of time. But I think what I have learned, which I need hammer home for a lot of other people, is once you get the basics down, they all work the same way. Sure, they've got their own individual little quirks, but I mean, you know how to pick up a meter. All right, you can go work on a security system. You know inputs and outputs. Okay, you can go work on an access system.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
because that is something I stress in specialized controls, that think about things as a PLC. That's it, because it's got goes-ins and goes-outs, and something to control the goes-ins and the goes-outs, and a backup power source. Yeah, if it's UL listed, it's a fire. If it's right.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you want us to do something? All right, well, that doing something is an output.
There you go.
Well, okay, how do you make that output do something? Well, it's got to have some sort of controlling input. Well, how does it do that? Logical relay. That's it. It's mind-numbingly simple once you break it down to brass tacks. But so many people just get so afraid of things. They're like, oh, I don't want to touch this. I don't really know about it.
You hit it right on the head. Fear.
Yeah.
And so I can already tell you don't have that fear. Like you're coming into the situation forward.
Well, I like to say there are 3 things that any technician or anybody, period, needs to really be successful. Okay. Number 1, they need the means. Simple, you need the right program, you need a meter, you need a screwdriver, the means. Then you need the opportunity. You can't really do anything if you don't have the opportunity, right? Even if you have to go make it yourself. Okay. And then the will. Those 3 things. If you can get those 3 things, you can make anything work. There
you go.
So if you don't
have... So let's review that. So the means, right? The tools, the training, the equipment, the opportunity, the
like you said, I can't go, program an EST panel without the specific program.
Right, without the program.
So hands are tied for a few things. I might be able to wiggle my way around things depending on what the problem is, but perfect example, you're going to go work on a circuit. A meter's probably a good idea.
Probably going to need one of those. Yeah. And then the will.
That's the biggest one, I think. I've worked with enough guys And generally speaking, within the first 4 hours of working with a guy, I can tell whether or not they actually have any willpower to do this job seriously or not. Because I've seen a lot of guys will, let's say, treat it as a job instead of a career, and they don't really take things seriously. They learn enough to sort of, let's say, cheat the system.
Get by.
Yeah, like a big one. Hey, where do you put EOLR? Exactly where it stands for, at the end of the stinking line, right? But where do you see half of them? Tied into the panel.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
we're not doing things right.
I can't disagree with that.
And, as I will admit here, I'm partially at least responsible for training the guy in the booth behind me.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
He's problematic.
Oh, isn't he though? It's terrible.
Damn much.
Man, I'm going to lost my train of thought because it was just started.
You said that you were partially responsible for training the guy behind us, but
Yeah.
you're able to tell if they have that will to stay on point or not.
Yeah. And what I'll tell him is we all have what I would call your 4:30 on a Friday calls, right? It's like, I want to go home. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I'm not thinking with a clear head. And I've been there. You've been there. He's been there. We've all been there. And I can forgive that, right? As long as you come back the next day and you kind of take care of the situation, or at least you get your customer to a good standard before you walk away. That's the important part, especially in the fire or nurse call or life safety stuff. Well, I mean, even with security too, right? But
because you can't leave a place unsecure. I mean, especially nowadays.
Oh yeah,
people crawling through everything.
Where are we? Portland? Yeah. That's about right.
Big timers. God,
it's interesting.
It is insane.
So, but there's some guys out there that they have that attitude all the time, and it's the another journeyman gave me this phrase: "Can't see it from my house." It's like I don't care if you can't see it from your house. Did you do a good job?
Yeah. Did you leave the place?
Yeah, better than when you found it.
Better than the way you found it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've gotten weird compliments just for doing tiny little things. Like it was quick little job just down in Lake Oswego. I made a bit of a mess, so I went hunting for a broom and sweeped up my mess. Oddly enough, owner of the building walks through and he sees me doing that. And he's like, hey, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm a guy working on your system here. He's like, why are you sweeping up? I'm like, oh, I made a mess. He's like, you want a job? I was like, what?
People are handing them to you.
Yeah, and little things like that.
It makes a huge difference, though.
Yeah,
it makes a huge difference if the client knows. Like if you, I teach that sometimes it's not fixing the panel; it's fixing the client. Like if I go up and I know what the problem is, the panel. I can, we can figure this out. Then what's going on with the client? If I can spend that time with the client and then fix the panel, it's like, hey, look, two things.
That is huge in both security and access. So you can do all the technical training and you can make it the most brilliant, bulletproof, amazing system. And then you put a client in front of it and it all goes sideways.
South.
And it's like, okay, well, what happened? I'm like, well, did you talk to them before you set up the system? They're like, what? No, I did it according to the specs. It's like, don't do that. Because your PM's going to give you a set of specs, and you should know, technically speaking, everything you're doing, and you should know why. Then you should go talk to your customer and say, hey, I just want to get on the same page as you. This is what the PM is telling me to do, and I'm not questioning it, but I'm like, hey, this means that you have to use the system in this particular way. Is that how you're going to do it? Let's just say you're doing a security system, right? And generally speaking with security systems, let's keep it pretty basic. You've got a perimeter and then you've got an interior. So you got some doors, you got some motions, glass breaks, that kind of thing. Generally speaking, there's going to be an exit entry point. Probably the front door. Okay. Well, the guy who always opens always uses the back door. All right. Are you going to force that employee to now go to the front every single time? Or are you going to make both points entry exits? It's a very simple thing to have a quick discussion on with your client and your customer and figure that stuff out so you can build and program the system to their specifications.
Nice.
What we call controlling the culture. Because sometimes you have to make the client kind of do something specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like with fire system, clients don't get to really touch fire systems for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But access
you
control,
sit there and do nothing for every year.
It's like this thing does its job and don't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
You get to hit the silence button and then you get to call me. With an access system, you're like, I'm going to give you everything because it's your system. You got to control, who comes in your building. You got to control when you got to take somebody's credentials out because you just fired them. Mm-hmm. With a security system, same thing. I'm going to have my access code to work on the system, but I'm never going to come in your building without you knowing about it, even if it's an on-call situation or an emergency situation. Mm-hmm. And I need to know how you're intending on using the system.
Nice.
So, because that happens all the time, right? You build the perfect system and suddenly they're calling you and it's like, it's just not working.
Right.
Your system's awful. I'm going to go get another person.
I'm going to go to another company because this doesn't work right.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy.
And it's a very simple conversation. It's like, all right, well, let's see what's not working and why. Mm-hmm. And, well, this door's not working. Okay, well, what's it doing, right? You talk to them about the culture that they have. You talk to them about the problematic employees that they have that are always breaking the system. You say, okay, how do we need to work around this? Do we need to force an issue and say, you guys need to go and do some retraining because they're never allowed to come in this door without specific credentials? Mm-hmm. Or you're going to make it a time schedule or something so they can in certain instances and not in other instances, or maybe managers are the only people that can come in here. Mm-hmm. So having those conversations, even if, your PM and your manager have already had them, just talk to them again, because maybe suddenly they have thought of something new, like, oh, hey, yeah, Steve from accounting, that guy always crawling in the window. Don't get it. Yeah.
I'm glad you're an instructor. I'm glad you're moving into that program. You've got the right mind for this. You've got a lot of energy, but you just, in a very short amount of time, we've talked about the means, the opportunity, the will, customer service skills, and controlling the culture. Like, you just hit on 5 topics that I didn't ask you for, other than the lead in, and you just encapsulated what every technician listening to this podcast should either already know or have in their pocket. They should have those already. And if they don't, then that's where they should be moving towards that. Mm-hmm. So you're spot on. It's nice to see that much energy. It really is.
Yeah, you say energy, and the guy behind me, we don't ever give him coffee because he can get very high strung sometimes. I try to mellow out every now and then, but
I get
frustrated.
Coffee, get Yeah. Because I can conflict pretty quick with folks when things go sideways. Not physical or anything like that, but if someone ties something to my system and it's not right, and I have to go and unscrew it or figure it out, I'm the kind of guy that goes, what exactly do you do here for us? Well, I'm an electrician. Okay, show me, because this isn't what electricians do. And they're like, oh, you just punched me in the nose. No, this is the way I expect it to be. This is the way I would do it. This is the way he would do it. This is the way the guy down the street would do it. Well, this is the way you're going to do it if you want to touch this thing. And they're like, oh, well, you're coming off like an arrogant prick. No. In this case, like for where I work now, I own the system. The system is mine. It belongs to my company. You're contracted to work on it. You have to be this tall to ride this ride. If you're not this tall to ride this ride, I don't want you touching it. And get this tall or get out. And they're like, I don't want this kind of battle. Okay, then let's start from the beginning. If you're going to work on the system, right, then by the time we get to this point, it should be completely flawless. Like, just like it was if you put a brand new system in. I should have no grounds. I should have no shorts. I should have all my stuff talking, all addressed correctly. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Then we're just going to tie the wires together, and guess what's going to happen? Bingo. It's going to go green. It's going to work perfectly. And I even teach my auto apprentice that. And so it's like, that's the standard we want. And I'm not trying to be an arrogant prick. I'm saying if you always wire to that standard and you always program and install to that standard, you won't have anybody chasing you down the street with a, with an axe.
That's the tough part is we have this lovely thing called the NEC and the NFPA and all the books.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're little tiny things we have to study in every now and then. And it's always an interesting conversation because is that the minimum standard? Yes, with a big asterisk next to it. So as I train new guys, I say, look, first you have to understand the letter of the law. Mm-hmm. Then you can understand the spirit of the law. And everything is open to interpretation. It even says it in the code book. I'm not saying you interpret it how you want, but you have to understand why it's there and work within and potentially around it, depending on the circumstance. Okay. And not everybody's okay with that.
I agree.
And it was quite interesting, coming in as a fresh journeyman years and years ago, because what advantage does a fresh journeyman have? Current codes. So you're up to snuff on all the current requirements. Yeah, now some jurisdictions will, change what requirements they want. They'll increase them, they'll lower them, they'll do whatever they want, right? But working with the other guys, this is also a bit of a battle, and this is where Will comes in quite a bit. You can say that you might be a little confrontational there, and depending on how you phrase it out in the field with another guy, they'll probably interpret it that way, right? Something I taught a different technician was, if you ever find yourself in that kind of situation, take the onus on yourself to correct it. That'll immediately correct everybody else's perception of the problem. Like, perfect example, Mike, you're not listening, versus, we're having a bit of a breakdown. Let me try again. They were
two different approaches, and a much softer one, the second one.
Yeah, because I'm coming at it from a constructive process, right? Like, I'm here to get something working or make something, put in a new system, fix something that's broken, talk about a cultural issue, whatever it is. I'm here to make it better than when I got here. And I'm going to do that however I can. But a lot of times I'm not going to be able to do that by myself for various reasons. Had a lovely conversation with an HVAC tech recently, because I went out and found out that, oh, hey, they want me to replace some batteries on a system for an inspection, but there's ground on the system. All right, well, I replaced the batteries. A lot of techs would be like, well, I've done my job. I'm going to take off. I'm like, no. They haven't.
I did my stuff, trying to go get some coffee.
Yeah. Having that little extra step, right? Like, hey, you saw something,
you walked away from it.
Yeah. And that's on you. So I was like, I'm going to go check this out. Keep a long story sort of shortish. Found out that there was some interesting wiring done by somebody else. And luckily they didn't blow up my panel, but they did introduce 24 AC back into one of my circuits.
Ooh.
Luckily.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah. Luckily it was just creating.
On SLC?
This was on conventional circuit.
Okay. No.
So yeah.
Thankfully it didn't lose its mind. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually quite impressed that it didn't happen.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, this is nice.
Bulletproof system right there.
Yeah, because I go up and I'm, still young enough and spry enough to go crawling around some pretty uncomfortable places. And I'm just looking at this stuff going, this looks weird. Why would they do it this way? Right? And then I go elsewhere and I'm like, oh, I got to take this splice apart. And right when I grab the splice, I go, ugh, okay. I think I know what's wrong. This should not be energized to the point where it bites me. And I come down and I'm like, all right, I think
you
I
made that noise too.
Yeah, I think I did. Because, big pet peeve of mine, wire nuts. Okay.
Don't like them?
No, love them.
Love them.
But
what colors? Which ones do you use?
I use all of them.
Okay.
I go down to the tiny blues all the way to the giant blacks. Just kind of depends on, circumstance.
I love tans.
Yeah, they're nice.
I'm in love with tans.
They're pretty good. But here's a lovely thing that they don't really talk about, and this is a wonderful standard that I'm going to put out into the world here. There's some guys that will take 2 wires, and they'll put them in parallel, and they'll put a wire nut on it, and they'll do a half turn. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, all right, it's good. So, what? No. And there are other guys who will do the same thing, and they'll take that, and they'll turn it, and they'll turn it, and turn it, until you got about 6 inches of twisted cable past the wire nut. And I'm like, why didn't you just make that thing permanent at that point? Wire nuts are there so we can intercept them and work on the system.
We might be able to take this apart someday.
So here's my suggestion to everybody. Mm-hmm. You put the wire in, you put the wire nut on, and you twist it until you get at least 1 turn on the exposed cable. Then you're good. That's
and no more.
Yeah, and no more. Yeah. That thing's never going to come apart without human intervention. And
this is low voltage, kids. I don't want to hear from the high voltage guys going,
"Hey, you got to torque it to
maximum torquage."
If we're talking about maximum torquage, or what kind of wrench am I using? I will. You've
seen the tools that the high voltage guys use?
Oh yeah,
man, like you're taking that stuff apart. Matter of fact, that's why my thumbs split. Is taking 16 gauge crap apart that high voltage guys have put together.
See, that's why I use a set of pliers. I don't break my thumbs.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those standards. It's like there's no real standard, and everybody's going to do it their same way. Mm-hmm. And I've gone to jobs where it looks great, but again, they think they did a great job, and it just came out of the wire nut. Or I forget what these connectors are called.
Wagos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to hate them.
I love them.
With a passion of 1,000 burning stars. Yeah. Because I would go to different locations and find, there's 8 conductors connected to this, and isn't it convenient that one of them failed?
Yes.
And it's like, well, what do you do? I'm just going to take the whole thing apart, and I'm just going to put a giant wire nut on it. Yeah. But I've learned to be okay with them in certain circumstances. Mm-hmm. But that, that's just
we started using them. And I might carry a little bag with the 2 and the 3 slots, and then tans and a couple of varieties of wire nuts. But I usually try to stick to the newest technology. Man, it makes my life so easy. It's easy.
A proponent of terminal strips myself.
I like those too. Do you use Phoenix, or are you using like Phoenix or Entrelot connectors, or are you using the white ones with the terminals on them?
I like the white ones because I can cut them down a size, so I can get a big old roll of them.
Okay, so like the ones that you would use for heat trace and heat.
Yeah. So I'll use those because I find their connections are pretty good.
Mm-hmm. They are really good.
Yeah, and I can connect it in any configuration I want.
Yep. And I can cut them off.
And I can cut them down to whatever I need. And because I'm always attaching them in some fairly decent sized can to make my wiring look semi decent, I can write the labeling right on next to the terminals.
Yep.
So I don't have to do an extra. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's another. Hey, here's a standard that should exist. Let's label things, guys.
Oh my God! If you touch it and you know what it is, label it.
Yeah.
Honest to God, even if it's something simple, even if it's just something. I was working on a NAC expander, and these are EST boosters on a simplex system. So I don't know how they got there. They just did. So there's nothing wrong with them. They're driving.
That's 20 years of hands in there. You'll see all kinds of manufacturers start slowly getting together.
Yeah, well, they're pretty bulletproof boosters, but they're driving a third party system, like I don't know, system sensor or something. I don't know what the heck they're driving, but so we just give an input, and we had one fail. So I looked at the label and it said 4th floor. So I go to the 4th floor and I'm scratching my head because none of those are having any troubles on it. So I went, well, the label's probably, something's wrong with the label. So drop down. So I figure out which NAC circuit I'm working on, label all 3 NACs because no one had done that yet. Drop down to the 2nd floor, no power. Okay. So I got a issue bigger than me. Label those. As I'm taking it out, the EOL falls out. So I'm like, okay, hold on. I'll stop, put it all back together again. Just quick tape label, this is NAC circuit 2 or signal circuit 2 for simplex stuff. And then turn around and got it all done. I'm like, okay, first thing I got to do, get back, make the label change. Because I don't want anybody to have to go to the 4th floor when you really ought to go to the 2nd. Mm-hmm. So I got all that stuff changed. Turn around, call the duty electrician, say, hey, you got no power. He shows up. He's like, yeah, no power. I said, okay, well, you don't need me over your shoulder. Have a nice day. Boom, out the door. So, it just, even though it was just a simple call, hey, no power to the NAC panel, we're on battery, opens up, tells you it's bad. Take the time, if you're going to touch it, to just identify something, even if it's something simple.
And interesting tip, don't always, and clearly the handwritten ones, don't trust those until you can verify them.
True.
But I have learned, don't trust the manufacturing labeling either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Perfect example on a couple of SK panels. Mm-hmm. Some of them have onboard relays, right?
Yep.
If you notice on some of them, you look at the little cheat sheet that's on the inside of the panel and the relays that are there, mm-hmm. the cheat sheet has them swapped.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm. And I discovered these things.
I did not notice that.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, relay 1, here's your trouble relay, relay mm-hmm. 1 and relay 2. Okay, that makes sense. And you look at the panel and it says, trouble, relay 2, relay 1. What?
Awkward.
Yeah. Or I will give credit to these panels, mm-hmm. SKPS6s. Mm-hmm. They're nice panels. I like them. They've got conventional notification system, but you can use them for a lot of different needs. And they've got individual circuit controls via dip switches, mm-hmm. which is super handy. Because I've gotten into some pretty complicated systems that were haberdashed in Frankenstein over the last 20 years. And they're like, hey, can you make this building sync? Mm-hmm. It's like, how much money do you have? This is going to take a long time. Yeah. And then they go, well, why? Well, because it's never done. But back to the panel for a second. The original panels that they came out with didn't properly label the ins and outs of the trigger circuit.
Okay.
And here's what's frustrating. You would think that there'd be some sort of reasonable, logical assessment you could make based on other panels, mm-hmm. right? You got your in and your out. You got 4 connections. Take a guess.
2 in, 2 out.
Well, yeah, but where are they?
Oh, you would think they'd be next to each other.
No, they are.
Okay.
But they're staggered.
Oh.
So your incoming are the 2 inside terminals, positive on top, negative on bottom. And then your outbound are the 2 out ones flipped.
No.
Yeah.
Which model is this again?
This is SKPS6. Now,
no
again,
kidding. I've got to look at that.
To their credit, they have finally labeled them. Because people, including me, when I first got this and it wasn't labeled, I was like, how am I creating a short on this system? I do not get it.
Because you've got them backwards. You're like, what did I do wrong here?
Yeah, because of course
because the polarity is reversed. Yeah.
Well, because the original labels just said, here's your trigger. Mm-hmm. It didn't say which one was in, which one was out. But it was pretty simple, right? All right. Generally speaking, it's a reverse voltage. So you just apply a voltage and you see what happens, right?
Right. See what goes on.
Hey, I emptied the building. All right, let's flip it over. Okay? But the other 2 were just labeled EOL.
And there's no polarization, so you don't know which way it's going to go.
Exactly. So I had a lovely conversation with one of their tech support guys. I'm like, you guys have got to label this. This is awful.
They've kind of. I'm going to look this product up because it's. I thought I knew which one you were talking about, but I don't think I do. So I've got to see that. I know that I've worked on like wheel lock power supplies where they have the double sets of contacts or where the terminal blocks are. Man, And you start wiring in those things, and it's just like, what the hell is going on here? There's just stuff everywhere. But at least you can figure it out. You know what I'm saying? But that would throw you for a loop.
Yeah. So when we go back to labeling, always double check. Get that pesky little meter out.
Could have gotten it wrong. Hey, Mike here. I just want to do a quick shout out to all of our listeners. Now, listen, it's been a wonderful couple of months getting the show moving, and we have seen a ton of growth, right? You guys are doing your part. People are downloading. You're telling people. That's super important to get this podcast on the map, okay? We've got good lineup of folks coming in the studio, and the biggest thing that I want you to know is that I want to hear from you. You, the person listening to this, all right? You want to be a part of this show. You want to talk about tips and tricks. You want to talk about things that you're learning in the trade. You want to talk about how this has changed your life. You want to talk about stuff like that, send me an email, okay? It's halfwattpod@gmail.com. And I'm interested in hearing about people who are in the union and people who are not in the union and people who are technicians and people who do alarm work and people who do camera access work, stuff like that. It doesn't just have to be fire alarm monkeys. It could be anybody. All right? So let's talk about this so that people can realize that this is a career that will change their life.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm back working on just a sole brand for the most part. There are some exceptions, but most of it's all simplex. So it's like now I'm going back to just where my brain is focused on each type of system and its nuances, pluses and minuses that I'm dealing with. That is kind of a relief in one way, but I can tell that I'm starting to lose my skill sets on these other competitive panels because I don't ever see them anymore. And it's only been a couple of years, so it's like...
Well, I have... my track record with these things is somewhat unique because I have lost count of how many times I have heard other people say, well, that's not possible. Like, well, guess what? It just became possible because that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So, and then you start learning things that even the tech support guys don't know. And then you have to give them that feedback. And it's like, this is what I saw.
This is what I saw it do.
Tell new technicians. And then you start having to remember on a per system basis, right? It's like, okay, I'm working with, simple example, DMP. All right, how do I get into programming that? Well, I got to use the jumper. Right? Okay, how do I get into programming on a DSX? Well, got to, generally speaking, get a laptop connected or through Ethernet or something so I can get the access or the programming. How do you get into any different kind of system? It's like, all right, well, this one works this way and this one works the other way. And anytime I get phone calls, and I'm sometimes confused because, I answer my phone. It's the work phone. I don't know who's calling me. It could be a customer. And then, I'll get a phone call and be like, hey, is this Adam? I'm like, yeah. Who's this? Oh, hey, I'm, this tech down in California. I'm like, okay, what can I do for you?
Why are you calling me?
It's like, well, I got your name and, some insight to look into this. And how do I do this? I'm like, all right, you're going to have to give me about 5 minutes because I'm going to have to remember exactly how that specific system works, but I will get you there.
Yeah. Do you keep notes or do you just have it in your head?
I did start a cheat sheet. It's still available for like little quirky things, and I realize I'm going to have to do that because in the event of my untimely death, well, all my information is gone, right? And then everybody else is going to be completely screwed.
Yeah.
Because
those are helpful though. I mean, when you've written it down and you have some sort of network you can share it with, or cloud-based thing that you can share it with the technicians that can keep hacks and. Because we did that at PSI. We had, a shared resource that, hey, we're out here and this is the access code for this one, or this is, some little secrets.
I think you touched on this on a previous show because, I'm trying to support this show.
Yeah, thank you.
When you guys aren't talking about really weird things.
I know. Sometimes they go off the rails, but.
Yeah. But you made a great point. I don't see a lot of information sharing on like an individual level.
Yeah.
So when I notice that myself, if I go out and generally I can say that I'm a service tech. What most people say is when things start going weird or they don't know what to do, to call me. Because I walked into the manager's office once and she just shook her head. She's like, what do you want? You always get the complicated ones. I'm like, you guys give them to me. What do you want me to do about it? But I will figure out what happened, especially if another tech is involved, and I will call that tech and I will talk to him about it.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm like, number one, you're never going to know unless I tell you. And that's the most frustrating part for a lot of my stuff is I'll hand it off to somebody else and I'll never know if my theory was right. Or if it was wrong, or they found something else, and that's frustrating because like I'm trying to be smarter every day if I can.
Tell me what you found, you know.
Yeah, and just like little tips and tricks. Had a new tech start with us. He went out to a job, intermittent trouble. Okay, you get out there and you find out it's an intermittent notification circuit. So my brain immediately goes, I'm gonna go touch the batteries. Okay. Why am I gonna go touch the batteries? If they're hot, they're bad. They burn themselves out. If you don't have an amp meter, that's a really good tip. They should be cool to the touch. If they're anything more than room temperature, boom, you're done.
Dump them.
Yeah, put a new set on. Okay. And I did that. Took me 5 minutes. He was out there for like 2 hours and couldn't figure it out. So I immediately call him. I'm like, hey, have you what's your thought process, right? How did you spend all this time?
Was it on a NAC panel? Was it on a NAC expander? Okay.
Yep. But I've encountered that in all other kinds of systems too, right? They're like, oh, we're suddenly getting this weird erroneous signal and we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. You heard the acronym KISS? Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you always got to start with basics, right?
I had a tech do that on a 5820 where he came out and, the 5820 starts to fail. At SK5820 fails, the power supplies start to tick. And so he pulled the SLC off, did a bunch of stuff, and as he reconnected it, didn't have any alarms on it. It went into alarm. And of course, it lit the whole building up and dumped it. It was a medical building. And as I came out to kind of, talk to him, see what went on, he was truly baffled. And I said, well, you got a couple different things happening here. You got a power supply that isn't working. That's the ticking sound. He didn't know that, so because he had never worked on it before. I said, the batteries are probably toast. So, when these things fail, the power supply is failing, the battery becomes like a big capacitor for it. And it's a balance between how much the batteries can give up and how much the power supply is putting out, depending on the load that's going out in the field. When you loaded it down, it just made a judgment call. It just said, I think the second floor is an alarm. Bam. And it calls it out. And it just doesn't know any better. It's doing its best, but its logic at this point is faulty because it doesn't have enough voltage to operate. We need a new panel. Yeah. That's the problem, And he's like, I had no idea. I'm like, well, now, with that little bit of experience, you walk into, one of these units, any 5820 that's ticking like that, you already know exactly what's going on now. That's it. There's nothing you can do. The power supply's toast. Get you another one, kid. Put it in. Pull a program quick.
Yeah. And sometimes, it goes down to like the stuff that we're supposed to learn in school. Ohm's law, Cherkov's law, that kind of stuff. And then you realize, oh man, I'm applying this every single day without even realizing it.
Without even thinking about it.
Absolutely. I had a DMP system that was controlling notification. I've worked on a lot of hybrid systems too. We don't do that in Oregon anymore.
Thankfully.
No.
Yeah,
so
thankfully.
Yeah. There's a lot of systems like we can do everything. You can, but you can't do any of it very well.
Yeah, you can do it all poorly.
Yeah. So this one, and again, we go back to what's appropriate and what's not, right? If you're going to do a single control circuit, that would be a single circuit, right? You got your bell circuit coming off to control your notification. What does this panel do? Well, it's got two lines coming off of it. So, okay, well, how do you keep that system happy? You put the end of line on the panel.
Right. On the second system. On the second circuit.
No.
Oh, at the panel.
Yeah. They put it on the DMP because you had two circuits leaving. Where's it going to decide the AOLR is?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So already we're doing more than should be done appropriately, but it's one of those things where I'm not allowed to reinvent the wheel because that's going to take a lot of work and the customer's not going to pay for it. And it's been there for 20 years. And I kind of just have to grit my teeth and bear it, even though it's like, I can fix this.
Right.
But it would take a lot more work. So, resistors. It's in the name. It will resist the specific circuit that it's on so it can control it appropriately. Well, what happens if they unland the resistor from that panel and it can't see the ELR anymore?
Goes into some sort of trouble condition.
No.
Or
It turns both the notification circuits on.
Oh, really?
Because the circuit is no longer resisting any of the outcoming voltage on it. And depending on the circuit that it's feeding, well, it could be 9 volts only DC that it's going to take to trip. And that resistor was holding back 2 volts.
Oh. So once you take that voltage drop away, it's like free.
Yep, I'm good.
Oh, no kidding.
So
security is a different animal. It really is.
Well, again, not really. We go back to fundamentals, right? What is a security system? Let's just say a conventional system. Okay. Let's just take Bosch, for example. Yeah. Even though I don't really like Bosch, but generally speaking, you've got same basic stuff. You got your incoming power, usually transformed. Generally speaking, 16.5 VAC coming off of a transformer you plug into a wall wart. Okay. All right, and then you've got your batteries. To this day, I have only ever blown up one panel. I've had many panels blow up because I introduced 24 volts into a 12-volt system. And that was my bad. So, be mindful when I say batteries, you got to make sure you're connecting the right voltage to these things.
Are these in series or parallel?
Yeah.
I did do that on a Vista once. I looked at it. They had 4 batteries on this Vista, and it's like, I just did one of these double takes. I'm like, 12 volts. Whew, God. Yeah. Okay, got it.
So
don't do that in...
Yep, you got your backup battery, so, spec it to the system. 12-volt system, 1 battery, people. 1 12-volt battery.
Uno battery.
Yep. You got a 24 system, 2 batteries in series. Sure. Yeah. And then you've got your, again, we'll keep it basic, conventional system. So you're going to have a panel, let's say 8 zones-ish. Some have a little less, some have a little more. Let's just say 8. What are all those 8 zones? Conventional circuits. So what are they going to put out? 3 to 7-ish volts, depending on the system, because they only need that voltage to essentially calculate what's going on with the system and take a look at the resistor and call it a day. So that's the same as a conventional fire system, right?
But why do they land the EOLs like at the panel half the time versus out in the field? Because that's when I worked on security, and I mean,
you remember when we talked about will?
Yeah,
these are guys who are like, it's not required
right.
by
Okay,
code.
that's exactly what I thought. Because I would open it up, because I've only worked on a couple of them, and I'm going to go, why do you think these would be here and not there?
Yeah,
and the guy I was working with said, because you're a fire guy, and that's not the way security people think. And I went,
and that's a problem.
That doesn't answer my question, but I get it.
Well, here's the thing. The security system is supposed to protect the premises and get the cops out there.
Including the circuit.
Yeah, okay. What if let's just say, pretend I'm an intelligent person, right? And I can go, I know how to manipulate this system, and I can go intercept the circuit and make it clean and go take care of whatever
break into the door.
Break in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, well, and again, this is like when people know enough to be dangerous, but they don't care enough to do it right. The end-of-line resistor exists there to supervise the circuit appropriately.
Right.
We force it on fire because it's a life safety system, but there's absolutely no reason that I can fathom why you wouldn't do it on a security system.
That's what I thought too.
And every security system that I've installed, I've done it appropriately because that is the most secure way you can do it.
Yeah.
Because if you go, if I go bridge, take a couple of snips, and I go snip the cable and I short it there, the rest of that cable is whatever I want it to be.
Whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
But if I did that with the EOLR there, I would immediately get the alarm state. Yep. So I've secured the building and the system better than any other technician has, simply by following appropriate procedures.
Nice.
And it frustrates the crap out of me because, okay, let's say they're not doing what most security guys do now, which is lick and stick. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong or anything like that. But when you want a building, let's say like a warehouse, and you're covering 15 doors, lick and stick ain't gonna cut it. Yeah. Right. Especially when you start to talk about roll up doors. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. Well, actually, there's 99 wrong ways to do something. So you're going to have to wire them correctly. And each one is going to be on its, much like fire systems, security systems can be intelligent too. So they'll have their own versions of modules. And then you'll basically have a polling loop. And then you'll go and wire those. You'll still wire the resistor at the end because, again, you're trying to make the system as secure as possible. Yeah. And if you don't, that's a choice that the technician is making to do a half-assed job.
Got it.
Now, there's one exception to this rule because everything's got an exception, right? You go do a takeover. You do not know how anybody ran the cabling, and you do not know where the resistor is because you went out in the field and you can't find it, and you can't find it at the panel. Well, now I got to do a takeover, and I got to change one EOL to another value.
Right.
All right, well, how am I going to do that? Well, we go back to what we learned, like, all right, I got to put some resistors together and make it work.
To make it somehow the right resistance, either add resistance to it in series or put something parallel with it. Or
so that's the one exception that even I have done because it's like I can't find this thing physically, and we're in like 500,000 square foot warehouse,
and I could see that being a bit that would make a lot of sense to me. That would make more sense to me than and like I said, my experience was very limited. So I mean, I don't think I've worked on more than 3 or 4 security panels in my life. I have worked on hybrids that played fire and played security, and I was working on the fire side before I Hulk smashed it. But, it was just like, as soon as it came to the security side, I'm just like, I just became a complete imbecile. I'm like, I have no idea how this works. Put this code in, especially not Vista. Put this code in twice and enjoy your life. And
Vistas. Tyler loves Vistas. I mean,
Vistas are fun. Oh, you got him in the booth. He's all jumping up and down like a drunken monkey. No.
Yeah, he had a wonderful learning experience when I had to teach him how Vistas work. No, they're not. They're awful.
But I appreciate the fact that they, what they do. And I've done a little bit of access control programming for stuff, but only like for our own building kind of thing. Mostly if I had to add a security system, I'd have one of my techs come out and do whatever it is you make it do, so it works.
Well, like you talk about security systems and access control systems. So the difference between an access system and an access control system?
No.
All right.
Explain.
So your standard quote-unquote access system basically gets you into the building.
Okay.
Pretty standard. You got your card reader, you got your lock.
Okay.
That's it. Because all they care about is just, we want to have a little bit more security. We don't want people just walking in willy-nilly, and we don't really care about the rest of it. Okay. Access control system, you want to know everything. So that's where your Rex comes in. That's where your door contact comes in.
So the terminology really is access control or access, one of the two, not both.
Yeah. Because surprisingly, some people know and some people don't, you can have certain systems do more than one thing. I have a couple of DMP systems out there that are doing security and access at the same time. So they have that capability if you know how to control it.
Now that I'm somewhat familiar with because we did have a DMP system at PSI and it had an access. Yeah, it had an access on it as well because we used it to go in and out the front doors and stuff.
But again, this is going back to the cultural thing. Like you really, really have to talk to your customers about their intention and how they want to quote unquote control the system, right? So you got big clients. They've got super secure buildings. They want access control because they want to know who's coming and going. They want to know how long the door is open for. They want to know whether or not it was forced. So, if for those that don't know, if I tape a door, because, we do that all the time so we can come and go and we can kind of keep the system secure. I got to go get some of my truck. I'm going to tape the door, come back. If I pull that door open without a appropriate card read, that sends a forced door. So they know. Or big one, they don't like people holding doors open for other people, right? Because they want to know every single
soul who's come through the door. Sure.
Yeah. So if you go and badge in and the door's open for like 15 seconds, they're going to call you and go, what's going on?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So every system needs to be designed and controlled differently. So a lot of people interchange access and access control, and they do fundamentally work the same way, card read lock, but one just gives you a hell of a lot more control.
Right, because up on the hill, that's what we have is access control, because you can, which I love, because it's like, oh, thank God. I have to use my keys. We have Medco keys, so it's like, that's when you have to open and close, unlock 100 doors in a day. It's like the access control is like, yes, look at that. I got access here. Or, ow.
Yeah. Here's a great tip, though. Even if you install a fantastic system like that, please put in a key override.
Yeah, they do, thankfully.
I have worked in some places that didn't.
Oh, and they just go crazy and lock themselves up and you can't get in?
Yeah. I once did an on-call. I was super frustrated by this.
Where is the control head at? In that door.
Yeah, it was just about that. I live south of Portland, and I get a call from a customer down in Salem. And I'm like, hey, we need you to go take a look at a system. It's like 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, all right, it's going to take me half an hour to get there. What exactly am I looking for? Well, we've got a power outage. That's what our access system is saying. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you call me right away, no problem. I can get there. The battery backup's probably fine. They're like, well, we knew about it at 6 a.m.
Uh-oh.
I'm like,
and it's fail secure.
I'm like, okay. Number one, why didn't you call us?
Exactly. Why are you calling me now?
Yeah. 14 hours later. And I'm like,
I could already hear this one coming.
I'm like, you guys do realize that there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to get into the building. They're like, well, we got to try, right? I'm like, okay, sure. Let's just go down and do it. Sure enough, I drive all the way down there. I get, and there's the card reader flashing. So I'm like, hey, it's good. It still has enough juice to flash. That's okay. It might have enough. So I call their remote guy back, and I'm like, all right, I'm at the building. Go ahead and let me in. No.
Not enough juice to pull to open the lock.
It's like, yeah, okay, cool. You have a key? I see a key override. Do you have a lockbox anywhere? No. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. There's not much else I can do. He's like, no worries. The manager will be in the morning. He's got the key. Like, why am I here? You realize I'm going to charge
people.
I'm going to charge you like $1,000.
Yeah, for this experience.
Yeah, for wasting everybody's time.
Oh my God. That just brings back memories, because we, when I was a manager, it was almost a bone of contention with the on-call techs that any jobs that they couldn't get to during the day would fall to the on-call tech. And so they sort of made it a point of, look, if we can't get to a service call and it can wait till the next day, we're not going to send an on-call tech out at night to handle this issue. And then you get the client that calls up and says, well, at 8 o'clock this morning, exactly the same thing happened. This went in and, well, we sort of forgot to call and now we need you. And it's like, let me tell you the cost. Oh, I guess we can wait till tomorrow, because it's that expensive to go all the way through. But I once had a tech, because I can work on sprinklers, I had to put a water flow switch in. I needed to get the switch in. And it was sometimes you get national accounts or accounts that are handled by outside agencies, and this was one of those with those issues. And out of complete desperation and frustration, even as a manager, Weasel, I just grabbed my tools and went and just installed this thing. Like, I couldn't take this anymore, And I'm like, got this thing all the way installed and got done. And the client looked at me and said, "Did you call the fire marshal?" And I'm like, and I didn't say this to him, but this is a national account that I'm stuck servicing after hours, but as a manager, I'm on salary. So there's no extra incentive here. Mm-hmm. I've done everything I can do. Your stuff is back up, it's running, it's 100%, it's golden. Here's the paperwork that says it's golden. Yeah, but did you call the fire marshal? I looked at this manager and I said, "What fire marshal? What are you talking about?" It was the one that put me on fire watch. And it says, "Who is it?" "Don't you know?" "How the hell would I know?" "No, I didn't. Did I put you on fire watch?" "No, he put you on fire watch." "Did he give you a card?" "Yeah." "Did it has a fax on it?" "Does it have a fax number?" And I go, "Yeah." I said, "Then take this document and fax it to him and take yourself off fire watch. I'm not doing any more here." Not to be a customer service jerk, but it's like at some point I said, you are also a manager. We can speak in weaselese, right? We can talk back and forth. You can get this all figured out. He's like, "Yeah, I could do that." I said, "Thank you." And it was like, and honestly, because we were not the company, we were not the servicing company. We were just the one that was like contracted to go fix the problem. Hmm. The rest of the debacle. That's how these national service contracts work. Yeah. Like, this company's in charge of that. That company's in charge of that, and we hire you to come in and just surgically come in and out. Mm-hmm. And the lines of demarcation are not clear. And I'm just like, I got done. I was like, no. I mean, no, I'm not. No, I don't even know who the hell this person is. You know how to fax. Have a nice life.
Yeah, there's. That's always going to be a judgment call, because there have been a lot of times, like, even on the install sides, they're like, "Well, who's responsible for this?" "Well, I don't know. Is it in our contract?"
Yeah.
No. Is it in somebody else's contract? No. It's like, well, and then I just take a look and go, all right, is this going to take me under 15 minutes? Mm-hmm. Fine. I will do it, because
fine.
It will take 72 hours for the first email to be.
Yeah, you're right there.
Like, nope, we're not going to do this. I'm just going to get it done. Yeah. And we're going to get it done.
But when when you're dealing with your own clients, and I've had some good national service contracts, and I've had some real upsetting ones. Like, I was working with one when I was with Western, and it was our own national service group, API, that handled it. And I was with one of my apprentices I now work with, and we found out that in this theater there were 16 projectors, and 8 of them would not shut off during a movie, during a fire alarm. Just 8 flat out wouldn't do it. And the more we got into it, the more we got into the weeds, we figured out that there were like different types of projectors with different types of interfacing criteria.
Why not?
So, yeah. So some would just take an open and close set of contacts. Others actually had an RS-232 feed that, I don't know how the hell that worked, and some of these were like kind of like open collector type configurations, where they would receive a voltage and then they would do something. And I just like, I eventually I got a hold of the projectionist, and I'm like, they have tied, and they did this. They actually tied the 24 volts from the fire panel through at least 7 or 8 projectors. And I didn't have ground faults. I had ground confusion. I had this thing which didn't know what it was doing. And when I finally pulled the wire off, it was a voice evac system too. Pulled the wire off, and I'm like, oh my God, the system stabilizes. I'm like, okay, my power's back, because I'll look at the split bus with my meter, and we started tracing it out, and we were just like amazed at how this thing had actually operated, having gone through 2 or 3 of these projectors, and then gone back to the panel.
Well, we're talking about labeling. Whatever genius put all of those together should have labeled it.
Yeah.
Because I worked with another HVAC guy recently, where we both worked on the same building, and there were some pretty interesting wiring, to say the least. And amazing, to this guy's credit, he drew up a diagram and he stuck it right to the HVAC.
Nice.
So
well played.
Yeah, anybody who goes and works on the system knows exactly how it's wired, because we've got our relay, they've got the duct relay, they've got an ice cube relay. They're splitting multiple systems, and it's like, if you do not know what is going on,
right,
good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
We wound up putting in a separate power supply, and we worked with this company, with this our own company, and said, look, what they really need is this, and then we need the projection company to give us relay inputs or relay, something we can tie to on each one. And they did that. Like, they were like, oh, that makes sense. And within like 3 weeks, we were done. Like, we were golden. And for the first time in years, the system was just completely normal. And they went, huh, that was easy. And we're like, and hit the alarm, and all the things shut off, and everybody leaves. So they said, well, you're great. We'll run you up to this other one. So I went up the street to the other one, and it was an older voice evac system. And it had so much noise on the voice output. His voice evac system. You could sit in the theater and hear it, and it's that Simplex has a very distinctive. The older Simplex system has a very distinctive sound on its SLC. It sounds just like Space Invaders. So it's like, it gets really quiet. It's like, and the guy goes, "Can you get rid of that?" And I said, "I think I can." So I start to work on it, and man, I tried everything. I mean, I tried every trick in the book. I even called an engineer who made special torids, and I said, "Is there any way?" And he said, "What frequency are you dealing with?" And I said, "Well, this would be around 3,000 hertz, 3,000 baud." And he went, "No, you have to have a torid the size of a bus to do anything for that." I'm like, "That's like, that's a no." And he goes, "No, that's a no." So it wound up being that the actual system itself, as manufactured, was just not good.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing you could. There was no. It was one of the very first generations they ever made of that panel, and when it got kicked out the door, it was like, "Yeah, it's ready to go," except in situations where you need it to be quiet, in which case it's not ready to go. And it turned out to be, that's exactly what the problem was. When we went back to manufacturing, like, that model that needs to be upgraded. That needs to be destroyed, Hulk smashed, removed, put in this. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was sad. I can't do that.
Well, I mean, sometimes you got to force that issue.
Yeah.
And I always try to think, put myself in the customer's shoes. Like, all right, how can I potentially try to save them a few bucks? Mm-hmm. But sometimes, like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's done. The system is dead. This thing needs to get upgraded no matter what. I actually have several customers that I'm talking to about that, where I'm like, look, nobody is going to service this thing. Mm-hmm. And you're lucky I'm here even trying, to be honest. I will do what I can, but you got to know the limitations. And I will there's one that I'm like, I will give this one shot. Mm-hmm. And if it works, awesome. You bought yourself anywhere between a month and a year.
Good luck.
Yeah. If it doesn't work, new system time.
What's the oldest systems you've actually worked on? Some of the older that you've seen?
All right, let's see. You heard of Thorn?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thorn autocall? Mm-hmm. Oh, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's old.
Yeah. Had a good
pull
one.
Start.
Almost. Not quite. Yeah. They're asking me to fix. This was one of the first versions of an intelligent system.
Truly multiplexed.
Mm-hmm. But they're like, hey, can you get a replacement part for this? I'm like, in what junkyard am I supposed to? Now,
out of the Thorn Museum is how you're going to get that.
We found one.
Really?
But it was the updated version of that part. Oh. So it used a different kind of, the original one was like a terminal, and this one was a Phoenix connector. Mm-hmm. Didn't have the Phoenix connector. So I had to go find a Phoenix connector to install on this thing just so I could get it wired in. And sure enough, because it was a newer style,
it didn't work.
Yeah. I'm like, I will always try it once.
Yeah.
The problem is, my dear customer, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for it if it works or it doesn't work, because I had to order the part and we had to go through this process. So I'm always upfront. I'm like, look, this is what this is going to cost. And I'm going to caveat, it probably won't work. Just like, the on-call thing. I will go out, it's going to cost you this much, and there's no guarantee I'm going to fix it. So
I just, and then you let the billing department fight with that about 2 weeks later,
Yes.
My new guy came all the way down here and charged me $1 million and didn't fix anything.
Yeah, and then I have to get your full name and your approval to charge you and your company this amount.
What was your Visa number again?
Yeah. So AutoCall was one. I'm trying to remember the name of this security system. It was so old, I had to find a faxed copy, not like an electronic copy of the manual. This one was scanned in. That's how old it was.
Hand typed, like a typed one. It looks like,
it was one of those where kind of the same thing. It was an old security system, just a couple of points on it, and their keypad went bad. Mm-hmm. And they sent me a picture of it, and I was just like, I have no idea what that is.
Gosh.
And then they say, well, we managed to find a keypad that looks exactly like it.
Oh,
so go see what you can do. It's like, awesome. So I go out on site, and I go find the actual box, and I still can't remember what it was called, but this thing had maybe like 4 zones on it. Mm-hmm. That's it. No visual interface, just a red light and a green light to let you know if it's armed or disarmed. To its credit, had a phone line attached to it that was, I believe, still utilizing rotary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is old.
And then I had to quickly learn how to program this system, because we found out that their access codes were stored in the keypad. So when I replaced it...
then you had to reprogram it.
We had to reprogram it.
Put the double E prom in.
Luckily, it had its own, actually. Nice. So I was like, this is actually a pretty nice keypad. It had everything I needed. So I was actually able to learn the system and get him back up and running in about an hour and a half.
Nice. Well played.
But super lucky, right? Because I'm like, there is no part for this thing. I don't know what dark corner of eBay they found this thing in.
I know.
But this will never happen again.
I've worked on old notifier panels that were plugs that look like
the bricks.
The bricks.
Yeah.
Well, we need to tie something into this. I'm like, this should be in a museum. This is really old.
Yeah, and
it worked, but
I got to pull one out.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it was an apartment complex, and I like to think that I'm a pretty straight shooter, right? Like, I will tell customers what's going on. I will walk them through the whole process. I will give them all the information they need. I will make them texts if they want to get that down to nitty gritty.
Sure.
So they understand that I'm not BSing them.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is exactly what's going on. So I get a call for this building. And I'm like, well, we don't know what's going on with it. So imagine, oh gosh, those really, really old phones you see in those like 1920 movies that they have this little microphone that comes out and then the little cup that comes out. That's kind of what this panel looked like.
Delco 3-4.
Yeah. And this building actually still had those phones in it.
No kidding.
They retrofitted them, and they're using them for their intercom system.
Oh, that is cool.
So when you
that is cool.
Yeah, when you go and like buzz in and say, hey, I'm here, they actually have to pick up those handsets.
Oh, that is so cool.
So the fact that they retrofitted them and made it work was pretty stinking cool.
That is neat, yeah.
But this panel, I can't even remember the manufacturer, one of those that hasn't been in business for 50 years. But yeah, probably bricks the size of my forearms. And they're like, what's wrong with that? Like, well, it's 50 years old.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It smells like smoke, though.
Well, because they were using an EST quick start to monitor it off of its alarm contacts.
Makes
sense.
Yeah.
It's alarm and trouble contacts. So it had about like 10 total contacts on this thing. Alarm, trouble, like one auxiliary relay, city box.
Mm-hmm.
That's how old
That's
this
how
thing.
old it was.
Yeah, it still had the city box on it.
Yeah. Can be wired multiple ways. You're like,
Yeah.
oh God, no.
And then, what was on it? One pull station circuit. So everything is on the same circuit, and one bell circuit. That's it.
Yeah.
So it just got compromised. Luckily, it was just a couple of bells that I found out in the field that I had to replace.
Nice.
So I got them back up and running, but I went straight to the manager. I'm like, you are now on borrowed time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to call me at 4 o'clock on a Friday and be like, this thing is dead. What do I do?
And there's nothing you can do.
You get on fire watch.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So 3 years later,
There we go. We got more life out of it than we expected.
My manager comes up and says, hey, they're ready to cut it over. It's like, what?
Wow.
This manager is amazing. She listened to me. It was, one of those co-ops. So she got the board. It was like, hey, this thing is, from the 1800s. We need to start saving and budgeting for this now because it's going down. So they did. It took them about 3 years. And to that panel's credit, it continued to work. And then my boss was like, hey, that thing on my desk.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like, I'm keeping that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I like that kind of stuff. Lake Oswego, when I was doing their library one time, this is before I got all changed out, had a reel-to-reel tape. It looked like reel-to-reel, but it actually looped itself back through. And I tripped it. We were working on the fire system, and we tripped it, and it called their dispatch.
Wow, still functional.
Said, this is the Lake Oswego Library. Yeah, it was still functioning, and it was an actual tape. You could like put your finger on it and slow it down. And we tripped it, and it reset itself, and I went, okay, that is unique. And not thinking about it now, I couldn't have told you what brand it was, how old it was. I mean, I saw those, and there was 2 fire systems I've worked on that had dry cells that literally had 6-volt those big 6-volt lantern battery dry cells. And every time I got there, the little window was down, the dry cell was gone, and you can't. It just basically ran pull stations. It was an AC pull station system, and then it had this like little battery that it could run.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, can you replace the battery?
Sure.
They haven't made them in like 30 years. I'll put a new one on.
Let me go down to the old hardware store. Yeah, they're I thankfully I think all those systems are gone. But other they're not.
I worked on one about 6 months ago.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Now, those would be classic panels to put on your wall to show kids.
Problem was, it didn't work anymore.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it took a dive, and I'm like, it's time. And without skipping a beat, the guy's like, I have a spare in my garage. Will you install it for me? I'm like, what do you mean you have a spare in your garage? He's like, yeah, I bought it like off of another company when they were getting rid of it because I knew eventually this would happen. I'm like,
kidding?
You want me to take the time to swap this out and try to make it work? He's like, yeah.
Like for like, I mean.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I'll let my coordinator know, and she'll call you, and we'll set up the time. Never heard from him again.
Thank God.
I'm like, he probably lost it, or he take it off the shelf and it fell and broke.
It's like the Portland, all those apartments that you go into where they have like 6 pull stations, 3 bells, and you're like, those things are so cool. Well, man, I really enjoyed talking with you, Adam. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. Did you want to say anything on to the listeners before we shut her down, or?
Just do everything with intention is really what it comes down to. We talk about that will. It's like you can treat this like a job that you're just going to come and go from, right? But we work with fire department a lot, right? And I've seen there's one station that's amazing. They've got the wall of devices, and these are smokes and other things that are anywhere from little dirty to clearly this thing has been through a fire. And it's these devices that literally save somebody's life.
Oh, nice.
And you can say, oh, that's just fire. I'm like, let's talk about security for a second.
Okay.
If you can at least get the cops out there, what if somebody's using perimeter interior and they arm the perimeter because they're working there late at night and somebody breaks in?
Yep.
Just the siren going off, gets people away. You potentially save somebody's life there. Access control for, you can talk about politics all you want. There's a lot of very interesting and violent people that live in Portland, sadly. And keeping them out of certain buildings is a fantastic idea. We never really hear about, generally speaking, the things that we've managed to prevent. But
that's a really good point.
But we always hear about the failures and the things that didn't go well. And you just have to remind yourself that if you never hear something, then you've done a good job, right? And you got to take what you do seriously. Because if I go install a system, if I had a kid, would I be okay with the kid being there?
Right.
Would my kid be protected in the event of any emergency in any way, shape, or form? Would I be comfortable in that? Your kid, your mom, your brother, whatever the case is. Put yourself in that mindset and, take the time to do it right.
That's good words to I couldn't agree more. What a pleasure to have you here. Would you come back?
Sure, if you guys invited me.
Well, I think we can make that happen. I really appreciate you coming on board.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Problem.
Thanks for listening to the Half Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.